Hey folks, Keith here from Dual Sport Journey and welcome back. Got another video here on the Brozz 250 Recon. We're going to do another upgrade. Big shout out to the all the great folks over at China Riders Forum. They just have so much information on this engine. This engine basically you'll see on a lot of these bikes, whether it's the Brozz, whether it's the Hawk, all those types of bikes you see on Amazon. And of course, YouTube is just full of videos on these bikes. They have just about all the information you could ever need or want on this type engine. This basically is CG250 engine. The clutch pack springs that they put in these engines just seem to be really weak. So what was suggested is upgrading to these. There are the heavy duty clutch springs. It says here 15% stronger than original. You see the part number right there. So 15% stronger than original parts. They're probably talking about original OEM. I have to surmise that these springs are probably much more than 15% stronger than the clutch pack springs that are in this engine. This has become a real common upgrade for these bikes, for this engine. So that's what we're gonna do today. So I already warmed the engine up for a few minutes and I'm gonna need to drain the oil here. So I'm gonna do that, let that drain out for a few minutes, make sure everything is out of there. Then we're gonna be removing this cover. Procedures for this are really not that complicated. Got a few things to detach. I either have to take the brake pedal off, or at least pull it out enough to give room for this cover to come off. Also, the kickstart is going to come off. So I'll pull the brake pedal off and the Kickstarter while that's all draining out of there, and then we'll get to the cover. Okay, I think most of the oil is out of it now, and as you can see, I took off the brake pedal. It's really simple. You have a linkage here, just held on with a cotter pin. You pull that cotter pin, pull that little pin that connects, just pull that right out. Same thing with the back of this here, right here. It's just held on with a cotter pin and a washer on the back. Just pull that cotter pin and the brake pedal just slides right out. Really simple. Of course, I took the Kickstarter off, as you can see. All right, so the next thing we got to do is we got to unhook the clutch cable right here. And that's pretty much just as simple as holding a little pressure on the clutch lever. Okay, and just like that. Okay, so now that all the oil is drained out, I'm gonna go ahead and put the oil plug back in there just so we don't forget. So we're gonna do that now. So next we just have to remove the cover bolts here. Take notice when you take them off. I believe one of them in the front is longer than the rest of them. I think the rest are the same size. Just make note of that as you take them off, okay? And make sure that they're all the same size. You find the one that's longest, you make sure it goes back in where it's supposed to. So we're gonna go ahead and just remove these bolts right now. So with all the bolts removed, next you just wanna give this cover kind of a few taps with something non-marring. And I wanna stress the word little taps, okay? Just to kind of loosen the cover up from the gasket. So hopefully we can just remove the cover without damaging the gasket. So with the cover removed, we were real gentle with this, making sure to take our time, taking the cover off. And you can see the gasket's in really good shape. So we're just gonna clean that up really good before we reinstall it. Also, make note of the clutch engagement lever right here. So you got to make sure that this little lever, okay, when you reinstall this cover, that you hold this lever in this position right here like that, so that the shaft here could set right into here when you put the cover back on. So next, basically, we have to take these bolts off. These are the bolts that you can see the springs, clutch pack springs, are behind this plate right here. So we're going to go ahead and loosen them up. Also, you really should be made aware of these little collars right here. There's one in the front and then one in the rear right there. Okay, they do come out. If they do happen to come out with the cover, you're really going to have to make sure that you find these and make sure they're back in place, okay, before you reinstall the cover. So just be advised as you loosen these bolts up that this is all under spring tension. So you just want to do a little bit at a time, and at some point this plate will just kind of pop off. It's not going to like blow off on you or anything like that. There's your springs. Okay, with that plate off now, we can kind of get an idea what the new springs are going to look like against the springs that are in the engine. So as you can see, this is a spring that basically comes stock in these engines. This is the upgraded spring. I mean, you can see right away how much thicker these springs. I mean, the ones that are in here in the engine, you can literally squeeze these with your fingers. So at this point, it's just as simple as just removing these stock springs that are in here and then just replacing it with the upgraded springs. So now with the new springs laid in there, the challenge now is to turn this over and then have the springs basically set in these grooves. So that you can start to compress it a little bit and then start the screws in. So it's helpful just to get a couple of these bolts started, just to kind of hold this plate up in place. And afterwards you can make sure all the springs are in the little pockets behind the plate here. You just want to make sure that you're tightening everything up equally. Just kind of tighten everything up in a cross pattern, you know, little by little. Just take your time. Just make sure your springs are seated in properly as you tighten everything down. Okay, so at this point in time, you want to make sure your gasket is back on there, seated, and you might want to wipe it down and make sure it's all clean. Also remember, we're going to need to hold this lever right here in position until we get the cover seated. Remember, we talked about you know, looking over these bolts as you take them out, and we did find one that was longer than the rest. The rest of them are identical, but we have one that's a little bit longer, and that one goes right in the very front of the engine right here. So we're just gonna get that one going right off the bat, and then just slowly work your way around, replacing all the bolts. So as you can see, I got everything back together here on the Brozz, put some fresh oil in it. Now I'm just letting the engine really warm up before I test this out. Okay, so it's in neutral now, as you can see. First gear, no, that didn't really feel clunky. Neutral was easy. There's second gear, right back into neutral. I mean, that was really easy and smooth. The clutch lever really feels a lot better as well. There's definitely more resistance there on the clutch lever, and it just feels better. All right, so I guess the next thing to do would be, we're going to head out and try to find some areas, maybe some hills and things like that, where we can kind of put a load on this engine at takeoff and at low speeds, low gear, and just see how it feels. Okay, I was able to find neutral so easy now, also with this. But let's get out of the valley and let's head up into those hills and see how it performs on some a little more challenging terrain. So I'll wrap this up, folks, but in summary, I just wanted to add a couple things. You know, I really do think this upgrade is worthwhile. The shifting was kind of clunky, and you know, I was kind of having issues getting it back in neutral while the bike was running, and I just figured as it broke in, you know, that would get better. But it was instant as soon as I changed those springs out. Now the shifting is much smoother. Much more positive engagement. I can get right into neutral easy, no problem. And this hill currently right now that you're seeing that I'm climbing, it's a pretty steep grade. You might not notice it there with the GoPro, but it's pretty steep. And I got right up to right in here someplace, and I shifted from 5th to 4th. But I climbed that hill in 5th gear, you know, and I've been up this hill plenty of times with this bike, and I've never done that. So I don't know if the engine is just kind of opening up a little bit, you know, or having more positive engagement in the clutch, you know, is actually helping. Either way, it's definitely, in my opinion, a worthwhile upgrade. So you're going to have about $15 on the spring set and a quart of oil to put back in the engine after you close things back up. It's pretty straightforward and easy to do. So do I think it's a worthwhile upgrade or modification, if you want to call it? Yes, absolutely. I do. It just makes the bike more enjoyable to ride all the way around. So I hope this video has been helpful, folks. Until next time, as always, be safe. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep putting the old Brozz through its paces. And I want to get as many miles on it as I can before the end of the season. So just remember, it's not the destination that's important, it's the journey.